In this video, I will show you how to upload a 3D video to YouTube so that it is recognized and the 3D icon appears here. To tell YouTube that your video is 3D, you used to be able to provide the information in a YouTube tag, but that doesn't work anymore. There was also a time when a YouTube 3D video creator existed as part of their test tube program, which supported a number of different viewing formats and devices. With it, you could even perform some editing tasks, such as syncing the audio and fixing vertical alignment issues. And it could even be used to export your video to YouTube in the 3D format. More recently, you could specify your video as 3D in an option in the advanced settings. None of those methods work anymore. So we will now look at the new methods that replace these older ones. Before we continue, I think we need to ask ourselves a question. Why would you want to upload a 3D video to YouTube? Now, the answer to that might seem obvious. You want your viewers to be able to see content in stereoscopic 3D. But we know that YouTube plays back the content in anaglyph mode anyway. So why not just upload your video as an anaglyph video in the first place? And I would recommend that you do not do that. And I'll give you some reasons for that before we start. Reason number one, your viewers may still want to be able to view the video in 2D mode. And the reason for that is that they may not have anaglyph glasses. And in that case, you don't want to be forced to watch it in this red-blue mode when you can also view it in 2D. So when you upload a video in 3D format, you can switch between anaglyph and 2D mode, whereas you can't do that if you just upload it as an anaglyph. Reason number two, the system that you're using to record your video may use a color gamut that is different to YouTube's. And I've had that happen. In fact, it's happened a lot to me. And when you then watch the anaglyph on YouTube, if you've uploaded it as an anaglyph, the colors can be slightly changed, and it doesn't take a lot. And your video will then have ghosting. So your left eye will be mixed up with the right eye somewhat, and vice versa. And when that happens, then it becomes uncomfortable to view it. You may not even be aware of it because you've tested it on your PC and it works. And so you think it works in YouTube, and viewers will just be telling you, hey, your 3D video doesn't work, even though you think it does. And it actually doesn't in YouTube because of this shift in color. So let YouTube handle your anaglyph colors, then it will be done correctly, as opposed to you taking that into your own hands. And reason number three, there are actually other modes that YouTube can present your video as apart from just anaglyph. And it's not necessarily in your browser, but if you, for example, consider that there would be viewers that view your video with VR headsets or with other 3D devices such as the Snap 3D and the LoomPad, for which I've done other reviews, you will also want viewers to be able to view your 3D videos using those devices. And if you've already uploaded your video as an anaglyph, they will not be able to do that. So my recommendation, and I hope this is becoming clear, is that I would still recommend that you upload your videos in 3D mode that YouTube understands using the methods that we're going to talk about now. On the Google support page, there are currently 3 different methods shown on how you can upload your 3D videos. This page may appear somewhat cryptic if you're not familiar with the terminology, but at the end of this video, hopefully, this will all sound as easy as pie. Just to clarify, I will be presenting 3 methods of my own, and they do not line up directly with the 3 points on this page. The first point on this page describes using an optional metadata box to define the video stereo frame layout. I've not really seen any working examples of this, and as the other 2 methods work just fine, I have not looked into this further in this video. For methods 1 and method 2, my method 1 and method 2, they line up with the second bullet point. And I'm simply using the Handbrake in the first instance and ffmpeg in the second to do the same thing. My method 3 lines up with bullet point 3. In summary, my 3 methods can be seen as moving from the most user-friendly approach to the highest quality approach, as depicted here in this table. Method 1, being the most user-friendly, uses a tool called Handbrake, which is a windowed application. Methods 2 and 3 use ffmpeg, a command line tool. And method 3 is the highest quality, as there is no encoding or decoding that takes place. Let me show you what I mean by this. In methods 1 and 2, we take the MP4 file. By the way, other common video extensions should also work as long as the video is in side by side, and decode the file. Then we stamp it with metadata that states frame packing equals 3. This basically declares the video frames to be arranged in a side-by-side manner. We then encode the video using the H.264 codec, which understands this metadata, and we can then upload this to YouTube. Method 3, on the other hand, we take a MP4 file and do not decode the file. We leave it as is. We simply place the already encoded H.264 video and place it into a Matroska container. That's another word for a MKV file. Because we do not have the frame packing equals 3 parameter in the encoded video, we need to label it in some other way that Matroska understands. For this, there is a metadata parameter called stereo mode. For this parameter, the side-by-side frame placement is denoted by the number 1. Hence we set stereo mode equals 1. YouTube understands this the same way and will therefore then make this a 3D video just the same as with the other 2 methods. Do note that the video will in all cases need to be side by side for uploading to YouTube. It can be either half width or full width side by side. If it is full width, which is by the way what I recommend because it's got the highest quality, then you will need to inform YouTube of the aspect ratio of the final viewing width. If you don't do this, it will assume an aspect ratio of your full width side-by-side video, which is actually twice the width of what you will ultimately be watching the video at. This results in white space on either side of the video that looks like this. To avoid this, you will need to specify an aspect ratio in the metadata that is different to the actual aspect ratio of the full width side-by-side video. For this, you will need to provide half the width of the SBS video, which is equivalent to either the right or the left stream of that side-by-side video. You will not need to do this for half-width side-by-side videos, since the final viewing aspect ratio is already correct even in the stored version of the side-by-side video. Note that because we are specifying aspect ratios that don't match the physical stored media, and also because some of the metadata is not understood by all media players, your videos using this method may not play correctly on those. But we're not too concerned about that because our purpose is to get the videos playing on YouTube, not on those video players. Also, I'll be showing you how to do batch processing of files for each of the methods, as you should find that that speeds things up for you if you are processing multiple files. And with that, let's get stuck into it. Okay, so here we have a side-by-side video. I'm just going to start that up and show you what it looks like. It's a full-width side-by-side video that we're going to be using to describe all of the methods that I'm going to be showing you. The first method is going to be using Handbrake. So I'm going to start up Handbrake. If you don't have it already, then you'll need to download it, and you can download it from here. I'll have the link in the description below for that as well. And what we'll do is we'll drag our side-by-side video into the application. Now, before you do anything, it is probably best to set up a preset for what we want to do. So if you don't already have this preset window open, you can open it using this button here. So you'll need to see this preset, and then we'll add a preset, and we're going to call this side by side. And this is for side by side YouTube upload. And the dimension for that will have the same as the source. And that's going to be important because we want to store this at the same pixel resolution and size as our source. So we'll add that. And you will now see down the bottom here that we've got this custom preset for side by side. And select that because we want to use that straight away. It's important so that we have the dimensions already set. If I go to this dimensions tab, set to the source. So you'll see that the width and the height are the same as that of the source, which is exactly what we want. Now what we have to do is for full width videos, because we want the ultimate viewing not to be the full width as I've described earlier. We want that to be half of that width because we just want it to be for the left eye or for the right eye width. For either one of those, that should be the same. In order to do that, set this to custom and deselect that aspect ratio and set the pixel aspect ratio, the second one, to 2. That will basically mean that our display width now is half of the width of the stored video, which is exactly what we want. Now, don't do that obviously when you have a side by side that's half width already. If it is half width already, leave that at 1. If it is full width, set that to 2 so that the display width will be halved. Once you've got that, go to your video tab, and here we are going to want to set the source, the frame rate the same as the source, and you are also going to want to set frame packing equals 3. And that is the most important setting here because that is what tells YouTube to recognize this as a 3D video. If you do not have that set, even if you do all else, it will not recognize it as a 3D video. So that here is your most important setting. Now we want to remember all that, so we will add that to our preset and we'll update the selected preset with that. Yes, we do want to do that. And it has now been set, which is good. Okay, so with that, we are ready to start to encode that video. So let's do that. You'll see here that it's created a new file, which should complete in any moment. And there it is. and we've now got our video which is ready for uploading. You'll see that it's playing back at half width, even though it is stored, and you'll see this, it is actually stored at full width. So if I look at properties, you will see that it does have the full width of 2560, and it is playing back at half width because we told it so. We basically told it here in the dimensions to have a pixel aspect ratio of 1:2, which then means that the width is going to be the half width. And that will cause YouTube to treat this file correctly, so that when you have it then shown in an anaglyph mode, it will have the correct width. Okay, with that, we can now upload that video to YouTube. And as you can see, the 3D icon now appears. So all is good. Now, just going back to Handbrake once more, I do want to show you, like I said, how to bulk process these. How to process these if you want to have a whole batch of files processed. So for that, I'm going to go to a pre-prepared directory where I have a number of videos, and I'm going to copy and paste that. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to open the source and open an entire folder. So I'm going to paste that path to that folder here and select that entire folder. It's now going to scan in all 3 of those videos. Now what you're going to want to do is select the side-by-side custom preset that we have already defined. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to repeat all those settings again. They are already in your preset, and you can have a look whether the files came in okay. So you can see that the first one is a rock here in an aquarium that I've uploaded okay. The second one is a wave on a ship, that's uploaded okay. And the third one here is Singapore Airport, and that has uploaded okay as well. We're now going to want to add that to the queue. So I'm going to add all 3 to the queue. You can see that there's 3 videos in the queue now, and we'll start processing them as a batch. And if you look here in the File Explorer, you can see that those files are now getting created. And once they're done, as they are now, I'll just quickly check that they have been created okay. There you go. In the sample, you can see that wave on a ship. Looks like they are all okay for uploading to YouTube. Okay, so next we're going to cover the method of using ffmpeg to convert your file, to add the metadata to your file so that YouTube recognizes it. And we're using the same file that we've used in the previous method. So we've got our sbs.mp4 file sitting right here. And this time we're going to open up a command window in the directory where that file resides. So to do that, I'm just going to click into the address bar here and type cmd. When I do that, it opens up a command prompt right into the directory that we're working with. If you don't open up your command prompt that way, you'll have to manually navigate to that directory using cd commands for change directory. Okay, so if you have ffmpeg installed and you type ffmpeg, it should give you the information of that install, so the version of that install. If you do not get this, you may not have installed ffmpeg correctly. I will provide instructions on how to install ffmpeg by means of providing a link to videos that others have made on that. That should hopefully help you on how to install this, particularly for Windows, where it's a little bit more of a complex install compared to Linux. Okay, so we obviously here have ffmpeg installed. What you will need to do now is simply use a command that I've provided for you, and that command is in the description. So if you scroll down into the description of this video, you will see that I have, for method 2, a number of different command lines. And the reason I've got different versions of this is because it depends on the aspect ratio that your video is. So in my case, the video, and this is the aspect ratio for either your left or your right eye, not for the entire SBS video. Mine is 1280 by 720, which is an aspect ratio of 1.7777. So I would copy the line that has that aspect ratio. Now, if your video has a different aspect ratio, you will need to take the appropriate line that corresponds to the aspect ratio of your video. So I'm just going to copy and paste that into the command line here and press enter. And it's as simple as that. It will now create the metadata injected file, which contains the frame packing equals 3. Okay, so now that we have that file, just open it to check it, and it looks good. We can now upload that to YouTube. And just to show you as well that this works for multiple files, let's just go into a directory I have already prepared for that. So we'll go into the batch processing. We've got our same 3 files that we've had previously. Just to show you that as well, let's open one up. There's the wave on the ship. I'll process these all at once. So to do that, I will just repeat the command that we've had before. To do that, I will, however, need to change directories. So I will get out of this. I will again type in command to open it in the correct directory. And now paste that command in here again and process that. And you will see that it has now created the metadata injected files for each of those as well. So just to check that, there is the metadata injected file, and similar for some of the others. Okay, so that's essentially doing the same thing that we've done in Handbrake, but using ffmpeg. Before we move on, I just want to quickly explain what this command actually does in its parts. The first part that you see highlighted here ensures that all of the MP4 files that are in the directory are executed with an ffmpeg command. So it cycles through all of the MP4 files in that directory. The next part of the command here sets the aspect ratio, and that is the part that I've explained before is important, so that when we then view this in YouTube, the aspect ratio is correct for our viewing for stereoscopic mode. Then the next part is the codec, and this codec is required in order for us to inject this frame packing metadata, which we will set to 3, as I've explained earlier as well. So this is where the magic happens, where we inform YouTube that this is a 3D video. And then the last section here, this last part, is simply renaming the file so that we don't store it back as the same file name, but as something else. And I just suffix that name, that file name, with metadata injected. You can change that to something else if you like, if you want that file name that it generates to have a different suffix. And it's as simple as that. There's not really all that much to it. It is simply a stringing together of some fairly simple concepts to produce these files. Okay, we've arrived at method 3, and this is my preferred method because, as I stated earlier, this is lossless. So we're basically taking the sbs.mp4 file and just placing it into a Matroska container, an MKV file that actually contains the original encoded MP4 file, unaltered, but just with a metadata item attached to it that indicates that this is stereo mode equals 1, which YouTube will recognize. So for this method, it will look very similar to what we've done before. We're using ffmpeg again, so apologies for the repeat of some of the material that I've covered in method 2. To process that, we will go to a command prompt, which will take us to the directory that we are in, and we'll copy and paste the command from the description below for method 3. You'll have to choose the aspect ratio that's right for your video. And as I've said before, the aspect ratio is going to be for your left stream or for your right stream, not for both together. So not for your complete side-by-side aspect ratio, but for one of those. And that way YouTube will understand that when you view it stereoscopically, ultimately what the aspect ratio will need to be. So in my case, it is 1.7777. In your case, that may be different. So pick the appropriate one. If it's not listed in the description and one of those lines, change it to whatever the aspect ratio actually is for you. And I will paste that in here and execute that. And as you can see, it's created that file right here almost instantaneously, because it didn't have to do any decoding and encoding. It just purely had to place it into the MKV container. And we can now upload that into YouTube, and you see that it has the 3D menu icon, which is the telltale sign that this has worked. The other thing that I want to cover here is batch processing. So I have prepared a directory for that, and I'll close down this command prompt and open up another one from the address bar again, so that we have the correct directory already set in our command prompt. And I will just copy and paste that very same command that we've just used in here again, and it should very quickly create those files for us. So it's created 3 additional files out of the 3 that were already in there, and just quickly checking that it has actually created those. So you can see the wave there on the ship, and you can see Singapore Airport, and it has created those, and we can now upload those to YouTube as well. So as I've said, the main difference between method 2 and method 3 is the actual command. So let's actually have a look at the command and see what it does in its parts. So the first part is the same as for method 2. Here we're basically saying process any MP4 file that you see in the directory using the ffmpeg command. So do ensure that you only place the files that you want processed into that directory. The next part is setting the aspect ratio, and we've talked about that before. So basically you set the aspect ratio for what your left eye or your right eye stream is for your video. So that will vary depending on what video you are processing. You will need to set the aspect ratio that is applicable to your video. The next part here, the -C copy, the -C stands for codec, is that we want to copy the codec straight across from the previous video. We don't want to decode it and then encode it again. We just want to take it as is and place it into the container. We're just basically copying it across. That's quite important. If you leave that out, then obviously it will have the potential to reduce quality somewhat, because it is going to do the decoding and encoding to produce your output file. The next part here is to add our metadata. And this is where the magic happens. So without this, YouTube will not understand that this is a 3D video. So for a Matriska container, you need to set stereo mode equals 1. And with that section in the command, that is what will take place. It will stamp the video with that metadata. And the last part of this command is simply giving the file, the output file, a suffix to distinguish it from your input file. And I have just suffixed it with metadata injected. And you can suffix it with something else if you wish. You just have to change this command. And that completes method 3. So this brings us to the end of the methods that you can use to upload your 3D content to YouTube. Now you may also be interested in what others have published on YouTube using this method of 3D viewing that YouTube allows for. And I'll provide some links to those channels and some of those videos in the description below. Bear in mind that those videos may not have been created using the same methods that I've talked about in this video. As I've already mentioned, over the years the methods have changed, and whilst those videos all have in common that they are viewable using this YouTube 3D method of viewing, they may not have been uploaded using the methods that we've described in this video. So with that, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and God bless.